skeletons on the beach, which would gather sand to build up the dunes as a protection against the rise of the sea level. And that was the start of the strandbeests. And so I bought some of these tubes and I played with the tubes, and then I saw so many things in there that I decided to spend 1 year on the tubes. And that got totally out of hand because it's 30 years ago and I'm still very much addicted to these tubes. So I can't sleep at night, and every day, so today I was working and then I put new things together, and usually it doesn't really work very well, but there comes sometimes a moment that something succeeds and then I build on that. So it takes a long time, but it's a real evolutionary process, I would say. I think in the beginning, so in the 90s, I designed the leg system on Atari computer. So that was in 1991, so it's a long time ago. And since then, I didn't touch the computer anymore, apart for emailing and for Zooming like now. And so then I worked just with my hands. And it seems like it's also a way of simulating, you could say, because when you make a drawing with a pencil, you have a two-dimensional drawing. Then I start building it in tubes, and then you can see a tube construction as a three-dimensional drawing. So instead of a line, you have a tube. And so you can build things in 3 dimensions. And that can go very fast, because in an hour or so, you can build something very fast, because you use for those zip ties, and then usually it doesn't do what I want it to do. And it seems like the tubes always want something else than I want. They always protest against my ideas, and they seem to want to tell me something, you have to go the other way. They force me to leave my ideas and to follow the ideas of the tubes, you could say. So the tubes, they tell me what to do, and then very slowly you get a sort of a very curly, a very capricious road I'm running, which I cannot predict. And so I'm not knowing where I'm going. It's always from day to day is different. In the morning I get an ingenious idea, and then I go to the studio, and then my ingenious idea is not as ingenious as it was in the morning. And so I get, at the end of the day, I'm quite disappointed that it doesn't work again. And but somehow you get used to these disappointments, and sometimes you see something which gives some hope. And if you build on that, then very slowly you come forward. There's a development. Because a month ago, I started a project about the beast resistant against sand. And still I'm working on it, and it probably like getting slowly forward. And I think it's a real evolutionary process, because you could see my ideas as a sort of mutations, and most mutations don't work, but sometimes a mutation works a little bit, and that gives me hope. And so the tubes, they force me not to follow my own brain. And that seems to be necessary to develop my work, because our brain of all the people have very many, they, they, they look more or less alike. That our brains are more or less the same. So once something you have been thinking of, somebody else has been thinking of as well. And the tubes, because I restrict myself to these tubes, then they force me to follow their ideas and not my own ideas. So they dictate me what to do. And it's not that I dictate the tubes, but the tubes, they dictate me. And they, it seems that the ideas of the tubes are so much better than my ideas. And so you get a sort of, when the animals are finished, I'm surprised myself how beautiful they became. I didn't work on beauty, and it's just the natural beauty is because I just followed the rules of the tubes. They told me what to do, and it seems to be when you try to make something beautiful, you don't succeed. But if you don't try it, then and you just listen to the tubes, then something becomes beautiful. Now, I never finish the piece. There's always something which is the beast is never finished. Now, they're all prototypes, you could say. So during the summer, I do all these experiments on the beach, and then in the end of the summer, I'm sick of repairing all the time, and then I declare the animal extinct. So they go to the boneyard, and I don't want to work on it anymore. But in fact, I'm a little bit wiser how the next beast would look like. And so, in fact, it's a learning process. So all these experiments, they teach me how to make strandbeests, because I don't know how to make strandbeests. Well, you're asking about perfection. But in fact, it's never perfect. I mean, there's always something breaking or something which is not for the video, especially in the beginning. I was so happy that they were walking a few seconds so I could make a video of it. But as soon as the video was over, they just collapsed. And so there was a lot of imperfection, I would say. And somehow this imperfection also is useful because it's well, why? It's a hard question because they look so perfect, but they are always a bit shaky, and it's that shakiness that learns something that I'm not there yet. So it's the evolutionary process is a very long process, and it's getting better and better, and it will be perfect, hopefully at the end of my life, that I can leave these animals out there on the beach and they will survive on their own. So I can quietly disappear to leave the planet, and knowing that these animals will live independently from me on the beach. That's the whole idea, that and that would be perfect. But it's also a sort of utopia. It's something which you're aiming for, and I'm often doubting if I will reach that point, but I wouldn't be surprised if it would be possible, because I cannot leave them now for 5 minutes on the beach or I have to do something with them. But that period of time I would like to stretch to 10 minutes, maybe half an hour, maybe a few weeks, and in the end, hopefully, many years. And it's an idealization of which might never be reached, but I try to get as far as possible. The perfect animal is an animal which survives on its own. The storms, the water, the sand, all the circumstances on the beach, they must survive. And that perfect animal is not there yet. Well, they are made of plastic tubes. So this is a kind of tube we use in Holland for cables in houses. So it's for electricity cables. So every house in Holland has this kind of tube. So that's why it's very cheap. And I want to restrict myself only to this material because of what I was saying already to Ivana, is that to force myself to not to follow my brain. So if you restrict yourself and you don't go to the shop and you buy electronics or whatever, or steel, then you have to do it with the tubes. The same way you could say that the creator, if he exists, also restricted himself very much in the choice of his materials. He just used protein to make us. We're all made of protein, only one material. You can make skin with protein, eyes with protein, anything you can make with protein. And you wouldn't say that if you put an egg in the pan to fry an egg, that this clumsy material is the ultimate construction material for life. But as long as you have millions of years and you try again and again, and that's what protein does, it renews itself all the time. So you could see the evolution as a constant trial and error process. And even if you have so much time, then this clumsy material becomes very efficient. So the way we're existing now is not bad. I mean, we're zooming over the earth, and it's you could say that the human body is and the human brain especially is a success. And in the same way, I want to restrict myself to this tube, so you could see this tube as my protein. It's my protein of my nature. And I just want to use this protein to build. And of course, I don't have millions of years, but in this very short time of 30 years, which is only a flash in evolution, these tubes, they have a lot more possibilities that I could ever think of, because you can run pistons in there, so you can pump up something with energy and store the energy in the beast, and you can make nerve cells, you can make muscles, you can even make a sort of brain with the tubes. And so it is a lot more than I could imagine when I was starting this. So I think for all the students, it should be a very good exercise to find yourself a good protein. So if you found something, you go to the supermarket and buy something, like buy, for instance, sugar bowls or whatever, and restrict yourself, or tea bags, and try to play for a long time with these materials. And if you play a long time with it, this these tea bags, they start talking to you. They start advising you what to do with them. And then you will be surprised how creative you can be, because that's a big problem of, I know a lot of students have this problem because they made a choice to do this study and they ask themselves, am I creative enough to justify this choice which I made in my life and to satisfy my parents, to give them the impression that I'm doing something useful. And so it's, my first advice would be, don't be creative. Don't try to be creative because it forces you it blocks you if you want to be creative. It's just like saying to a comedian, you're a comedian, make me laugh. It's impossible because it blocks you something if it's something expect from you which you are not able to do. So in fact, you shouldn't be creative. You should let the tea bags be creative. They should show you where to go, and don't try to realize an idea, but play with the material, and the material will tell you what to do. Yeah, it's of course I was thinking of the waves on the beach, because the natural environment of the strandbeest is really the beach, because the beach is the only environment they can really walk, because it must be flat. And so they don't like grass, the strandbeest. And since there is a lot of wind on the beach, it's the most obvious source of energy you could use. Of course, you could also use the sunlight, but to change sunlight in energy, you can do it, but the affection is not so big. It's not very efficient. And you could also use the waves, of course, or the tides for energy. And I've been thinking of that, but still the most obvious thing is the wind, because it's so available here on the beach. And it's something which you could also easily store, because these animals, they move their wings and they pump up air in soda bottles to high pressure, and that's the spare energy which they need in case that the wind falls away on the beach. So apart from that, the wind is mostly available. If it's not available, you can store it and still use it. So, and of course, the beach, I was born on this beach here in Scheveningen. So apart from the most practical way to survive, is also for my feeling, is that I have a strong connection with the sea and the beach. So that's why my life started. And it was my first impression of the world, was in fact on the beach. And I went to study inland a long time ago. And since a few years, I'm back at the sea again. So at this moment, in fact, I'm looking at the sea. It's the sun has just went down, and so I live at the sea, and it's emotionally, the sea is very important for me. No, a long time I tried to do internship, and it's but I stopped doing that, not because of that the interns were not good, they were great, but somehow when I work with people, I get worried about them if they have drunken coffee enough or they having a good time, and it somehow subtract me from my work. So, but I work together with my son-in-law. He has a different studio, and he makes lots of parts, and he keeps the exhibitions fresh. So he takes care of the maintenance of the exhibitions, and he takes care of the transports and so on. And my wife Leah, she does all the emails and all the administration kind of work. And my daughter, she helps me one day in a week, and we work together. But she's the only person I can really work with, because maybe I'm not worried enough for her. So she takes her own coffee, and she doesn't care. So we're having a good time together. So she works tomorrow. She comes in the morning at 10 o'clock, and then we work the whole day. And the rest of her life, she is a barber. She cuts people's hair. Well, I would say that you learn, at least I learned most of the things I didn't learn in school. It's you, if you just start working, I mean, that gives you, of course, theory is good for you, but to get wiser, you should just work the work you should do later when you're got your diploma. And so I would advise you to start projects immediately with which could be realized. So you're working with anthropology. So you mean you work with people, right? And so yes. I would do these projects immediately with the people, and not so much for the books, but doing the things directly with people. So that's something which I'm surprised myself, because a lot of times things are not very hopeful. So especially recently, I saw my first animal again, which I built in 1990, and I looked at it, and it was really looking very pathetic. How could I work with this? How could I hope that this would become something? It looked really, and then I realized when I was working on it, I was seeing everything in front of me. So that's I think is that I was optimistic when there was not a real good reason for it. And that's what you call the irrational optimism. And I think that if you can be an irrational optimist, so you don't need a reason to be an optimist, then and you just keep on continuing, then the frustration and the disappointments are so numerous that you don't care about it anymore. You just go on and you keep on hoping. And so I advise you to become an irrational optimist.
So so it's like you depend on that irrational optimist to keep going on your work?
Yeah, so it gives me, you just need hope. You need just to keep on hoping. And there's an internal energy which seems natural in me somehow. And I think I got it from my mother. She was an irrational optimist. She was in the war. She got 11 children. I was the last of 11 children, and she was always optimistic. And I think she was a big example for me. And maybe genetically, I inherited this irrational optimism of her as well. I'm at home, so I have been working a whole day in my studio, and then I did a long walk in the dunes here, and then I had my dinner here, and just after dinner, you came, and it was a pleasure for me to be in Santiago for a few minutes, for half an hour, because I have so good memories of Santiago. Wonderful people. I really love you, and I remember people wearing so reacted with their heart on the exhibition. That was very much stimulating for me. So I was happy to be in Santiago for. Please say hello to everybody.